So today I'm out in the field with my Canon M50. I want to see how it holds up in real world situations and how it stands up to my trusty Canon 5D Mark IV. Stick around. When Bill and I first started using the Canon M50 a few months ago, we were using it just for what I'm using it for right now, which is video purposes. We were surprised to find out, though, that it really is good for still photography also. So when you combine its small size, lightweight, and ability to produce really good images, this really piqued our interest to see if this is something that we can use, not necessarily in place of our big professional DSLRs, but alongside them, and see what kind of shots we can get using a small camera like this in certain situations. And we've tested it out in a few various situations, but I really wanted to test it out, out in the field in a real world shooting situation. So today I came to Fire Island National Seashore on the south shore of Long Island. That's the Fire Island Lighthouse behind me there also. This is the kind of place where if I was traveling here or if I was going on vacation here, this is the kind of place that I would come to take pictures. So I figured I would come to a place like this and just go through my normal motions, go through the kind of shots that I would take in a situation like this. But I'm going to use both my Canon 5D Mark IV, which is my tried and true camera. I've been using it for a few years now and I love it. It's the best camera I've ever had. And I'm going to use the same lenses and get the same kind of shots using the Canon M50 and go back in the computer later on and actually compare the results side by side. I don't want to shoot on a tripod at f8 or f11 under controlled conditions. I want to shoot the way I would normally shoot out in the field. Wide open apertures in all various positions, all various situations, and really compare apples to apples, what kind of shots I can get from both of these cameras. I'm not going to use any kind of speed booster or adapter to change the focal length of on the M50. I want to actually, use the native lenses, and I want to get the actual data that you're going to get without altering it or filtering it in any way through an adapter. So come on along with me while we do some shooting. So I'm starting out by using the Canon 85mm 1.4 lens. I'm using it on the 5D4 here first. I'm going to take a couple of shots with this, and then I'm going to put the same lens on the Canon M50, and we'll compare shots. We'll see what it looks like. Now, focal length, for starters, is going to be different because of the crop factor on the smaller size of the Canon M50. The 85mm lens is going to be closer to like a 120mm lens or so. So there's definitely going to be a crop factor in there. So I'm going to try to get the framing, fairly similar at least. So it's going to be a little bit different, but you'll see what the difference is in the framing and everything when I actually put them into the computer. You can see what that looks like, and now we're going to switch cameras and we're going to try to get the same shot using the Canon M50. So in order to get that shot with the Canon M50 with the 85mm lens, I had to walk about 150 feet further back in order to get the whole lighthouse in the shot. And you can see it's still not the same framing. It's not the same shot at all whatsoever. The foreground elements aren't there. There was no way to get the same shot using the Canon M50 because of the crop factor. I'm really looking for image quality between the two sensors, the Canon M50 and the Canon 5D Mark IV. So of those shots that I just took, let's go back into the computer. Let's take a closer look at the details of those captures, and we'll see what they look like. So I was watching back this video of me outside at the beach while I was getting this set up, and it just reminded me how much I really prefer to be out shooting or anywhere shooting rather than sitting at a computer editing. But I guess that's part of what we have to do. I'm sure it's better than it was in the old days when you'd have to be locked away in a closet somewhere to create and edit images. I mean, nowadays you can sit at a park bench, sit in a Starbucks somewhere. You can really do this anywhere. So we have to be grateful for that. But I definitely prefer to be out shooting any day. So let's take a look at our photos here. We have the two shots. This first one here is from the 5D Mark IV, and this one next to it here is from the M50. Now obviously the cropping, the framing is going to be different. This Canon 5D Mark IV is a full frame sensor, which means you're using the full image circle from the lens, and the M50 has a smaller sensor, so you're really only utilizing the center portion of the lens. So that's what the crop factor basically is. Now, I wasn't able to create the same composition. I had to move back about 150 feet just to get the whole lighthouse in the frame using the M50, and I wasn't able to get the same composition even in that situation. So that's something that you definitely want to consider
when going from a full-frame sensor to a smaller sensor camera is the crop factor. Because you have lenses. Let's say you're using a 24 to 70 zoom lens on your full frame sensor. It's going to be more like a 35 to 105 lens on your crop camera. So that's definitely going to make a difference in how you shoot and how you compose. So that's something that you always want to consider. Now, we've talked about the speed booster here. I'll put a link to the review so you can check that out. It's really a great tool to be able to basically convert your lenses on a small sensor camera to the original focal length of the lens. So check out that video if that's something that you want to use. If you want to be able to preserve the original focal length and not lose any light or anything in your crop sensor camera, definitely want to check that out. But for purposes of this, like I said, you can really see the difference in the framing here. I'm actually going to crop the 5D Mark IV image down to the similar cropping as I got on the M50, just so we can compare them apples to apples. So now you can see these two images. Here's the 5D4, here's the M50, are basically the same image. The lighting and coloring is off just a little bit, just because of, one was shot 5 minutes later and one was shot from a different position. So that's going to be slightly off. And that could also be, that could all be corrected in Lightroom, if you want to make these things exactly the same. But basically you have an almost identical image from these two cameras. Now, zooming in even further, at a full 1:1 crop ratio, we can take a look at some of the detail. Here's close-up with the Canon 5D4, and here's the same close-up from the Canon M50. Very similar image. Sharpness is very similar. Coloring, contrast, everything is very similar between these two. The image from the M50 actually has a little bit more noise in the roof here that you can see compared to the 5D4, which gives you a nice, much cleaner image there, but it's really not much of a difference. If we scroll up a little bit and take a look at some of the detail from the lighthouse itself compared to the M50, there really isn't much difference. Again, other than some of the noise, you can actually see a little bit of noise in the sky here. Compare it again to the 5D4, where the sky is much smoother in these blue areas. Now, these are at 100% crops, and pull back to the full image. Unless you're digging in and looking at 100% crops of images, you're really not going to see any difference at all between these two. You may be able to nitpick a couple of little things, but overall you really don't see any difference in image quality between these two. The Canon 5D4 has about 30 megapixel sensor. The M50 is about 25, so you have similar resolution there, and I really don't see much difference anywhere else. So yeah, indoors editing. It's actually raining out now anyway, so I'd prefer not to be at the beach right now anyway. But what does this tell me? I'm not ready to give up my full-frame professional DSLR yet. Although the M50 is a really great camera and pound for pound, just an amazing piece of camera equipment, it's not quite ready yet to replace something like the Canon 5D4, but it's actually a great step in the right direction, and it's really a great supplemental camera to have with you in situations where you either can't or don't want to bring the big heavy DSLR with you. The M50 is really a great substitute in situations like that. It's going to get you great images. Really, I have no complaints whatsoever with the M50. Just not ready to give up my trusty 5D4 yet. But we're going to keep trying this thing out. I'm going to be doing other videos like this with my other lenses and other situations, really kind of pushing the M50 to the extreme to see how it holds up against the big cameras. So check those out coming up soon. I hope you liked this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Definitely subscribe to the channel. This way you get notified when we post other videos about the M50 and all the other things that we're talking about in the photography world. As always, if you have any questions or anything you want to tell us, put them in the comments below. We love to hear from you. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.